more atheist caller that I'm going to allow to come in anyway, because they had a really important question. But as promised, we actually got a theist, and I'm going to give them precedence because we said we would. We have, and it's not only is it a theist caller, but it's a theist caller who is calling about gender, and so like we get both. So we've got David, pronouns he, him, is a theist who says that there are only two genders, and we're happy to talk to you, David. I promise we'll be nice until we aren't. David, you're on the line. How are you doing today?
Damn right, I better get precedence. What's up, man?
We did promise.
Okay, cool. So look, I'm not like I'm very accepting of things, right? But the thing is, yeah. I'm wondering the question. I'm wondering why. Okay, so we know that. Okay, so in my opinion, there are two genders because one has a period and one doesn't. One gives birth and one can't. Now, what's the whole thing? Why are there multiple genders? Can you explain that?
So I can explain it, but like I think it would be better to just focus on what you just said because I think that'll get us there. So you said sure. One gender has a period and gives birth, and the other doesn't. So when my mom had a hysterectomy, did she stop being a woman?
No, of course not.
Okay, but she doesn't have a period and she can't give birth. So what gender is she?
She's a female, you know.
Right, but like if your criteria is giving birth and having a period, are there other criteria upon which you can rely?
I mean, when you're born, aren't you assigned a gender by your genetics?
No, you're assigned a gender by or a sex by your genitalia, but ambiguous genitalia that can't easily be determined are more common than like IQs over 140. They happen all the time. So like if an intersex person has, you know, super ambiguous genitalia and we can't really tell what it is, do they not have a gender or what's going on with that?
No, you're right. You're right. So there are those rare cases where people do have both, or like you said, it's undefinable, but they get to a certain point where they either can give birth or they can't. I mean, there might be the cases where they can do both, I guess, but I mean, that would make it up there.
So you know, give birth or you can't. What if you're born without a uterus, but you do have a vagina? Are you a boy?
No, you're still a female.
Okay, but you can't give birth.
Right. I mean, that's just wouldn't that be a, what's that called? There's a word that where the cell comes is not, I'm not prepared for this, but there's a word for it. Mutated. That's like a mutation, right? A mutation.
Like just an anomaly. Right. But the thing is, like we talked about earlier, even if it's only like 1% of the population, that's millions and millions and millions of people. So like, why wouldn't you count them and ask them, you know, what we should address them as?
Right.
The key here that I'm trying to get to is that even if we go to genetics, there are men with XX allosomes. We call it De La Chapelle syndrome. Some or all of the SRY gene can translocate over to the X chromosome, and so you have XX males. You can also have types of De La Chapelle syndrome where you don't have an SRY gene at all. SRY gene is generally what we talk about as the on-off switch for male development, but it isn't always, because here's a fun fact, other genes that produce testes and ovaries, and everybody has them. And so like you have, you know, an epistatic event upstream where you still have, you know, a male development. You have XX chromosomes. And similarly, we have Sawyer syndrome. You have a woman with XY chromosomes. There are case studies of women with XY chromosomes who have gotten pregnant and given birth to healthy children. Are they actually men? We talk about the ability to give birth. Again, women can lose the ability to give birth, or they can never have it at all. They could be born infertile. They could be born without a uterus. They could be born, you know, with a tilted uterus. They could have all sorts of issues. You talk about penises and vaginas. Well, there's a lot of in between on those. We talk about hormone washes earlier on. Erica did an amazing discussion on hormone washes in utero. those go all sorts of different ways, and there isn't two options on those either. And also, what's really most important is that we're talking about how every single determining factor in sex has a lot of variation. Sex and gender are also different things, and gender is a social presentation. It's something that we build off of the culturally expected behaviors based around roughly someone's sex. But the honest truth is, if you study gender across cultural lines, you cannot boil gender down, nor can you predict gender from sex. And there are a bunch of cultures. I'm going to go ahead and link this in the chat here. Here's a map that you can explore. This is in the chat now. Mm-hmm. There are cultures all over the world that have more than two genders, that have 3 or 4 or 5 different genders that they recognize, because of the different presentations that people express. And so, like, the key here is that sex and gender are different things, and neither one of them is a strict binary.
So kind of just to add on to what David's saying, or to add on to what Forrest is saying here, David, right? Like, so Forrest just gave you a couple of examples of sort of exceptions to this generalization of, you know, you're born and let's talk about sex, because it sounds to me like what you're talking about is sex. So sex and gender are distinct things, but let's talk about sex, right? So Forrest is talking about how there are exceptions to the general binary that we tend or have traditionally considered male and female. So, you know, take it to like a different example, right? Like if I took you to a meadow of flowers and we're walking down the path and I say, hey, we're about to come up on this meadow of flowers. The two kinds of flowers that are here are purple and red. And then we roll up and you see that like 1 out of every 100 flowers or 10 out of every 100 flowers are actually purple. They're not blue or red. Would it be accurate then to say that the field of flowers contains only 2 colors of flower? Because to me, it wouldn't. It doesn't really matter how few the examples are, whether they're 1% or 5% of the flowers in the field. And similarly, folks who are intersex do represent exceptions to this general binary, amongst other kinds of exceptions to the binary of male and female that we've traditionally assigned. So I think it's fair to say that at least with regard to sex, right, Forrest is correct, as we talked about earlier, it's not necessarily binary. It's more accurate to say that it is bimodal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, thanks for bringing that up. It makes a lot of sense. You know, I look, I'm a theist, but I lean heavily towards science. You know, I don't let dumb things like convince me, right? Of course. Wouldn't these anomalies be necessary for there to be like a equilibrium in the genders? If it's just male and female, that would be dangerous, I think. Wouldn't there have to be like little in-betweens here and there to help us, you know, continue our I guess our normal gene pool instead of like just male female all the time? Because I feel like that would be bad if it were like that without the anomalies or mutations, right?
So is what you're asking, why don't we see more people who represent sort of an in-between condition that would provide more variation to the population and would be overall good? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I feel like having those the differences is. I mean, I'm not a biologist. I don't know any of this stuff. I've just watched a lot of documentaries. I've taken some classes, but I lean more towards the like astronomy side. But anyways, that's why I don't know about this stuff too much. But what I've seen, it's more of like, wouldn't it be necessary to have these mutations for our species to continue in a healthy way? If you didn't have them, wouldn't it be like dangerous?
So it kind of depends, because like, yes, genetic diversity is necessary. A lot of times with intersex conditions, which is, you know, if we're talking about like differences in sex determination, things like that, you know, there are a lot of those that are going to cause infertility, and so like that wouldn't matter really. But really, what's more important about it is that when we're talking about this, we're talking about human beings, and so like, humans are unique in the animal kingdom in that we are the only ones that can express gender. Like I said a minute ago, gender is a purely social thing. It's something that is very much deals with your internal sense of who you are. And so you can't go ask a chimpanzee, what does it feel like to be a boy? You know, it doesn't really work. And I guarantee, you know, you and I both use he, him pronouns. I promise you there are a lot of differences between what you consider male, masculine, boy feelings and behaviors and things like that, and then what I have. Because that's just how it is, man. Not even if we grew up in the same culture, like here I am with my weird shit, and here you are with your weird shit. We're gonna feel different, and so like what we have here, rather than looking at it purely from a biological perspective and trying to get into this like Mott and Bailey argument of like it's biologically possible, therefore human rights, like because that shouldn't be the conversation. Instead, it's more interesting, I think, in my opinion, to just be asking questions and like talking to people who have different opinions and different expressions of gender, and like feeling like what are they feeling right now? How does it work for me to exist in their world and them in my world? Does it bother me or matter to me at all? If so, why? If not, why? Maybe it should a little bit. Maybe it's something interesting that we can talk about. Basically, like, I think it's really, and this is me on my soapbox, forgive me, but like, I think it's important that we do away with all the parts of gender that suck and keep the parts that are fun. And in that way, do away with the systemic oppression, and do away with the judgment, and do away with the expectation, and keep the expression and the excitement and the joy of discovery and the personal development. And so like, yeah, you could point to some weird biological thing out of it that it has this or that benefit. I don't know if you'd find one. I don't know if you'd find a detriment either. But I think it's more important to just point to the sociological aspect of it or the anthropological aspect of it and say like, hey, this is something cool that humans do. Let's learn more about it. And let's talk to people who have different experiences than me. And you should call into the Transatlantic Call-In Show and talk to some trans folk and ask about their ideas of what gender is all about for them. I think that would be beneficial as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I believe is okay, well, I feel like a lot of this stuff has been politicized, and mainly because of the pushback from religious people, right? But I also feel that religious people have been very toxic to the point where it's happened, when eventually you corner something to a point where it fights back, right? So that part I understand, but the fact that it's been politicized to a point where it's now become a toxic, not to say that the people themselves are toxic, the leaders of these people have been pushing, I guess because they make money off of this stuff, so for them it's a piggy bank or whatever. But then again, I do respect the people that do really feel this way or are actually the anomalies, right? But again, I feel like the people, the reason why our species continues is because there are male and female, and if there are in-betweens, then I would say those are mutations or anomalies that without us, they would die out. Not to be offensive against anyone, just saying, that's how it would work. So they would,
so just to be clear,
are anomalies. Yeah.
Right. So just to be clear, when I want to be clear with you, I don't think that you're trying to be offensive to anybody. I think you're asking these questions in earnest, and that's why we're having this conversation in the first place. When you refer to people as anomalies, though, you have to understand, it's dehumanizing in a bit of a way.
No,
so
I don't mean
I'm not trying to
way.
call you out. Yeah. I don't think you do. I'm not trying to call you out here. Yeah. But I think it's important to remember, like, yeah, if you remember, I don't know if you were listening a little while ago, after the first call, I went on a whole rant about different types of thinking in biology. Did you hear that at all?
I mean, I've been listening for like over an hour or almost two, so maybe I listened to a lot of this.
It was a long time ago, and it was but one thing that I brought up was that we have different types of thinking in biology. The same way that we have different ways of fighting to win different types of fights, there's different martial arts styles, there's different ways of thinking in biology to attack different problems. And what I think you're putting on here is there's typological thinking where you like, this is this type of thing. This is what a primate looks like. This is what a cell looks like. This is what a mitochondria looks like, whatever it is. There's tree thinking, which is all thinking about like, how does this represent the evolutionary chain? What benefit does this provide? When did this come up and why? What was the context for this kind of thing? And then there's population thinking, which is, let's look at the actual distribution of the entire population, all the variation within it, and see how that plays out statistically and what that looks like in real time. And what I'm hearing from you is a lot of typological thinking. This is what a male and a female is, even though, as we've demonstrated a minute ago, you don't have a way of actually defining male and female without excluding somebody that would actually should fit in that group. And you're coming at it with tree thinking. Humans need to survive through sex, and so these anomalous people, these rarities, these people that are coming up so rarely with the differences, they're actually not the norm, and therefore are they something we should pay attention to, or they should be representative of society? And what I'm asking you to try is this population thinking, saying like, here's the actual total distribution of humans. Most men are XY. And most women are XX, and most men have a penis, and most women have a vagina, and most men produce sperm, and most women do that, and like go on and on and on. But as long as you're just really, really remembering to put that word most in there, and remember the people who don't fall into that most, that there's a varium of continuation, a continuum of variation between them, and that that doesn't mean that you have to say, okay, well, now I'm going to define 10,000 new sexes. It just means, yeah, we can still say here's these two groups, these two major groups, and then there's a lot of other people too, and that's okay. And just kind of let that be a thing that's allowed in the way. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I would advocate for. And again, can't stress this enough. We are still only talking about sex. We still haven't even covered gender yet.
Right. No, you know what? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's what sucks mostly is that everything that's been politicized, and there's these groups that are extremists that are, I guess they're outliers. Because I've seen, normal things come out of regular people who say, oh, I'm trans, and I don't accept these things, and I don't accept certain things. And that's cool, but then again, you have morons on the religious side who are not only insulting them, everybody's damned to hell, apparently, right? I don't believe in hell. I'm not a Christian. I'm just saying I believe in God, just so you guys know, but I feel like this whole toxic pushback from both sides is making it worse for, I guess, society as a whole. So I guess that's what we're trying to say here, right? That we should just accept people for who they are without the toxic part of it, right?
Yeah. Right, that's the long and short of it. And again, when it comes to gender, understanding that gender is a social construct means that it is necessarily non-binary. It can't possibly, because it is something that we made up. Whether or not it's something innate within us is irrelevant, because it's something that varies from culture to culture, to generation, person to person, day to day. It can't possibly have only two categories. It can't possibly do. Even if we name two categories, that doesn't mean they're the only ones. And as we say over and over, or at least I do, nature does whatever nature wants to do. Our jobs as biologists is to try to take that and put it into boxes. And that doesn't always work. It's like, if you look at a map from the 1800s is better than no map, but Google Earth is better than an 1800s map. But the Earth is what the Earth looks like, and Google Earth is still wrong. Every map is wrong, but some of them are useful. And in science, every model, every theory is wrong, but some of them are useful. Because all we're doing is trying to define and put labels on reality. But reality is what reality is. And if reality defies our definitions, that's our problem, not realities. So if we see people who express themselves and have internal feelings outside of the binary that we've labeled, that's not their problem. That's the problem of the model. That's our issue to solve as a society. If we see intersex people and we're like, well, I only know of this male and this female group, that's not the intersex person's problem. That's the model's problem. And as I said a minute ago, biology is the study of generalities, and generalities are generally wrong. So it's okay that we say, here's male and female, and it's okay if we say here's man and woman. That's totally fine. We're allowed to do that. But we don't get to take away the humanity of people who fall outside those norms, those binaries. Hope that makes sense.
Right. That makes total sense. I'm about that. So just because I'm a theist doesn't mean that I'm here to bash people. No, every human deserves to live happily. So, I'm just here to learn. I guess what you just said made sense, and that's good. Because I'm also into science or whatever, and I'm studying. So, that makes sense. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Also, I have a quick question. What kills mites? Because I have a cat that I found, and now I'm infested with mites.
Mites?
If I can ask right here. If I can ask that here. If not, I'll just Google it.
You say mice, the rodent, or mites, the little creepy crawlies?
No, mites, like ear mites, little tiny ones. How do I get?
Flip. I don't know. Pork acid, maybe.
Damn it. Okay. So you don't know anything.
I would do. Well, if you have pets and you want to be safe, diatomaceous earth is great. Diatomaceous earth is just ground up silica. There are these tiny little microorganisms called diatoms, which make their cell walls out of silica. They're literally like bacteria coated in glass, basically. And you grind those up and you make this really insanely soft powder. And any arthropod that gets into it, it's going to clog up all their spiracles, their breathing holes, and they're going to die weirdly. But it won't hurt like your cats and dogs. And so, like, that might be a good investment. But again, I am not in pest control. I am a dumbass on the internet who argues science for fun.
No, yeah, I know about the diet. Everything you said, I know, luckily. But I guess people that are out there might need that information. But anyways, so I guess that's it. So thanks for the call.
Yeah, really quick before I let you go, Erica, I just talked for this entire call. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, dude, you were on a roll. I was listening to you talk, and I was like, "This is like you. I know you. This is like your topic." I was like, "You got this, man. Like you're on this." The only thing I would have to add is that if I found out I had a bunch of mites in my house, my solution would be to either set it on fire or move.
Oh, believe me, it sucks. I mean, they're a little annoying, you know. I just want to get rid of them. But anyways, thanks guys for the information. It's mind-opening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right, take care.
I appreciate it. Take care, David. And if you ever want to call in and talk about why you believe in God, we'd love to do that too.
I mean, yeah, sure. But you guys don't get put together often. But yeah, so it's science. I mean, I think we spoke about it before, Forrest. It's science related. But I guess I don't want to take more time of your time.
That's fine. Well, yeah, no, call back in next time Erica and I are on and present your argument for God, because I'd love to talk about it with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. I take care, guys. Have a good one. Thank you.
See you later, dude. Bye-bye. As always, by the way, even though I know we had a great call with David, I feel always compelled to just break out at least one of them. This is the one that I usually go to, my college genetics textbook, where it says in chapter 4, I've got it bookmarked because I do this so often, 4.1, sex is determined by a number of different mechanisms. And here on this first page right there, gender is not the same as sex. Biological sex refers to the anatomical and physiological phenotype of an individual. Gender is a category assigned by the individual or others based on behavior and cultural practices. One's gender need not coincide with one's biological sex. And you can also look at, this is a cool one, actually. Let me really quickly, let me put this down and let me open this up. So this is, okay, I'm going to move this here. Yo, Arden, can you make my screen the whole business for a second? Can you blow me up on the thing?
Remove me from the feed, Arden. Take me away.
Get out of here, Erica.
Oh, shit. The wrong one. There we go.
Okay. I just want to show you something. I'm going to switch to display capture here. So you should be seeing now my computer screen like this. There it is. And then these are like biology textbooks here. This is Campbell biology. This is like the tome of knowledge that, like, if you're an undergrad, you need to memorize half of this book and then you get a bachelor's degree is basically what this is. And we can look in here for things like gender and see if we can find one. Got a few of them. I'll flip. So here, this is the whole book. Chapter. Yeah, biological sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, human sexuality. Let me see if I can find. This is value of diverse viewpoints in science is not exactly what I'm going for. Cell cycle. Chromosomal basis of sex, term gender, previously used as a synonym for sex, is more often used to refer to an individual's own experience identifying as male, female, or otherwise. This book goes into, if I look up transgender, like it explains what these are going. Like, this is not ideology. This is science. You know what I mean? Like, it's so frustrating when I hear people talk about, like, oh, this is all, just your politics. This is the Campbell biology concepts and connections. This is the level, whereas this is the book for like college students. This is like freshman, college, maybe even high school, right? And we can look for words like binary in here. And it's going to give us a bunch of binary fission, of course. If I can. Here we go.
Just take a quick detour and talk about binary fission for a little while. That'll not everyone will stay very engaged.
Here's again sex chromosomes and sex-linked genes. The term sex has traditionally been used to divide chromosomes into binary types. Coming to understand, sex classification may be less distinct. We now know that sex is not a binary state with two defined outcomes. And again, it goes into here's intersex people, here's transgender people. Like, this is literally basic biology. And so, like, for so many people out there, like, when we talk about this stuff, you can bring Erica back in, please, get my ugly face off of here on the main screen. But like, when we talk about these things, all too often the conversation shifts and people are like talking about, oh, well, this is, you're letting your politics get into your science or things like that. And it's like, I encourage you to think outside the box a little bit more and like actually pick up one of these books, because usually when we have these calls, I like to bring out this genetics book, or I'll bring out this anthropology. Here's a human biology book, which is all about, here it's got this whole chapter. I'm going to cover this picture up because it's a naked person, but it talks about ambiguous genitalia, and it talks about this individual has a female appearance but XY chromosomes. This is literally from the top of this paragraph right here. It's not correct to say that all XY individuals develop into males. And it's also not correct to say in individuals with XX male syndrome, the SRY gene is in translocation. It goes on and talks about that. Here's another one. Well, this is an anthropology textbook.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Like, this has been in the textbooks, right? Like, this has been in textbooks.
Yeah, this is not new. None of this is new. These are just ones. Yeah, these are textbooks that I happen to be teaching out of at this moment, so I have them on hand. And some of these were my textbooks in college. This one is an anthropology textbook.
Like, I'm just shutting down like the notion that it's like, oh, because people out there might be like, oh, well, you're showing textbooks, but those are new textbooks. Like, they just put that in, and it's like, no, I don't. That's not the case, right? Like, this has, we wrap back around to the same concept. Why did this suddenly become an issue now? Like, therein lies the problem, because this has been non-controversial, at least as far as I know, for quite some time. And now all of a sudden it's like, you're being forced to pull out all of these textbooks to show that it says the same thing that it has said forever. Like, maybe not forever, but at least the past couple of decades, maybe a handful of decades, something like that. I mean, I'm not an expert.
That's exactly what I'm trying to. Right. But that is exactly what I'm driving at. It's like, by pulling these textbooks out, I'm not trying to show like, oh, I'm so much smarter, I know all these things. I'm just trying to show like this, not a bit of this is news. The only thing that's new about it is that a bunch of politicians, and unfortunately a bunch of biologists, have found a platform, have found a niche in telling people that, they're the narrow heuristics that define their worldview are scientifically correct. And that's just not reasonable. It just isn't. And then you get the same arguments, the same tired, worn out arguments you and I have gone over in this call, where it's in this whole show, where it's like, well, where's the third gamete? It doesn't matter. That's not the argument.
Well, like, I mean, I don't get it, right? Because like, I don't understand how a lot of these folks, because I've seen, like I said, I saw the Fuentes article, and I saw so much fighting and just vitriol coming his way, and I was like, this is so strange because I know that a lot of these folks who are esteemed biologists and even anthropologists and folks who behavioral ecologists who've been doing this stuff for a while, like why suddenly have they go? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Because I know they've seen these textbooks, so I wonder if the situation isn't that they're being fed things, they're observing media, and the media is the left is saying this, the liberals are saying that, and then they're oh, if they think that that's true and it's something clear, it's something no one is saying, and then they turn around and they feel like they need to overcorrect or something, because I can't imagine that all of these biologists are malicious. I wonder what's going on. What do you think is, and I'm curious to your opinion, because I just expressed mine. I think they're being misinformed and overcorrecting. But what do you think? Why do you think all of these biologists are suddenly, and I say all of these, it's really not that many. It's mostly just ones that feel getting riled up on Twitter. And I don't know. I don't understand it personally, but
I think it's the same reason why we used to have people who, the same reason why we used to say left-handedness was sinister. The same reason we used to say sex and gender is the same thing. The same reason why we used to say anything is that it's just an outdated way of thinking that you don't realize has kind of worked its way into your brain. That we live in a society that teaches you this. And even though you go to school and learn it this different way, you still operate in the society every day. And so, or maybe you find some other reason, maybe you're a TERF and you're, like you brought up earlier, the biology, but you're concerned about the ramifications of the biology. Well, if people believe this, then they're going to come into my bathroom and poop near me, and that's going to take away my rights to do something. I don't know. That's whatever. It's that's maybe you make some issue and what I love the idea of science has a left-leaning slant. it just kind of it tends to get you that way. And especially anthropology. There's a reason why so many anthropologists are anarchists and shit, because when you study human culture and civilization, these fairy tales that we tell ourselves about meritocracy kind of fall apart. And so we when you really dig down into it, and when you focus yourself on compassion and knowledge more than whatever political motivation you may have, I'll be honest with you, man, I'll be the first to defend LGBT rights because I think that equality is important. If the science showed a strict binary of genders, I would be out here with the whole mental health awareness crowd saying, "Oh, these people need to be taken care of." Now, I would still be advocating for your rights to be a human and do whatever you want. But if the data showed something different, that's the side I would be on. But it just so happens that that's not where we're at in terms of reality and in terms of our knowledge. The more we learn, the more we understand that these people aren't crazy. They're trying to express themselves, and they're valid, and we need to take them seriously.
It's such a myopic view of the scope of human variation and human behavior too. And not just human behavior, but even primate or mammal behavior, right? From a primatological perspective, right? We have these bins that it's males behave this way and females behave this way. And anybody who's ever spent any amount of time watching animals, primates especially, do anything know that's you can't box them in, right? They're individuals, right, and they're going to behave and express themselves in the way that they want to behave and express themselves. And you can create the generalities as we talked about earlier, but humans are that tight, on hyper super mega mode where it's we're just behaving in such a myriad of fantastic and wonderful ways and horrible, awful ways, unfortunately too. But right, the idea that there are these sort of strict bins, especially for gender, that blows my mind, especially because just looking at history, I study more of the bioanth stuff from a perspective before we really reach humanity. So this is much less my field, but my understanding of human culture and history is that humans, if there is a way to behave, there is a culture out there that behaves that way, right? And sometimes, there are two bins, and sometimes there's more bins than that, and sometimes the bins are inverted, and it's just all over the place. And so I don't know how someone can look at that wide range of human behavior and experience and then turn around and say, not only we need to do this thing this way with these two bins, but also pretend that that's how we've always done it. And it's kind of like, I just don't, like, that doesn't bear out at all. Like, spend any amount of time at all researching humans or non-human primates or the history of society is how we've expressed ourselves through space and time, and it just doesn't pan out. And like, you know, it really bugs me too. It's like the party of small government is the ones leading the charge on this. You can't behave that way. Right? I say you can't. It's just kind of like,
right.
I don't know. Like, I want to say it's goofy, but calling it goofy downplays the sinister and widespread reach that this kind of thinking has, and that sucks a lot. That sucks.
Yep. It really does. We've got 5 calls left on the line. And a few of them I really actually want to get. We were talking so I've been looking down